Greetings everyone. I am very pleased to present the presentation on the topic Southern Family, Chapter 10 by Gail Godwin. Chapter 10 is in the form of letter written by Clara to Theo. The letter starts with Dear Theo, I am up here alone in the country. Felix was supposed to fly from Toronto, where he is been at a Chicago festival, but our nearest airport is closed. I came up here today, watched the Democratic hopefuls sit around a table telling how it would be run the country if he was the president. I had already sent money to Gary Harry. I feel sure if you had been watching it with me that you have felt the same. I called Julia, who had also watched the debate, and asked her if it has bothered her that as girls we had not seen such obvious realities and racial prejudice. I dipped into two novels. First novel was by a young southerner still in his 20s, and the other was by a middle-aged Eastern European exiled from the country. The worst thing that happens in the first novel is that the boy narrator discovers his mother is having an affair with a man beneath her. First thing that happens to the other narrator is that Russian tanks invade his hometown. I don't remember falling asleep, but it was already daylight when I woke up with my heart pounding from a dream, and I like anything I have ever dreamed. There was no action, no vivid emotion. I wanted to die or kill somebody or both at the same time. When I still possessed by the utmost rage and despair. Then slowly the awfulness drained away, and I started counting my blessings and distancing myself from the poor lost soul who had inhabited me in the dream. When I went to the window and pulled the curtain, even the snow was sibbling. Do it mean Felix was not going to be able to get here today? Felix phoned from Toronto to say the airport at our end was closed. After he hung up, I made some coffee and walked around the house, feeling self consciously spared from the bad things of life. I bought this place 10 years ago, spent all my savings as a down payment. My plan for the future, while I was teaching in the writer's workshop out in Iowa, was that I would be living in New York City before my 35th birthday. Julia, who in those years had an apartment in New York and a room in it waiting for me. Julia decides her conscience compelled her to move back to Mountain City to help care of her mother. It took me less than a week in New York to realize I could not survive that as a writer without Julia's temporary heaven and a lot more money than I was like to have for years. I bought a map of New York State and circled the area. 2 years later, she happened to have her wallet removed from her purse by an agile thief while she was hurrying from the Museum of Modern Art to the new Igmar Bergam film at a movie house on 3rd Avenue. She ended up meeting the love of her life. Not only that, but getting two in Manhattan. The way Clara answered to Theo's question is extraordinary. Theo's beginning to fall apart. You had just announced that maybe you did not even want to be a main character in my kind of world anymore, and I was hurt and angry because you're my brother. I've been regularly avoiding in my life and work in order to maintain my vision of life and my belief in myself, the same way I did when I was telling you about half 10 years ago in New York. When I got back to New York after your funeral, I loved myself a few days before. I dared go into my study in Felix's house. I knew that after all that had just transpired in Mountain City, the problems of my character in Gotham, a week after your death, was like catching an unexpected glimpse of myself in mirror. Back from an interruption phone call from Donaldo, my accountant. He was 35. He has been accountant for 12 years. Our first battle of the legally allowed amount in my retirement fund. Snow told me you had sent for an application to the IRS just before you died. She said you told her in one of your last phone calls that you are sick of helping rich people keeping their money. Where is the picture of you falling through the air in slow motion that I can't get out of my mind? One of my visits from England. You all were then living in the house before Quick Hill, the one Ralph built in Huckleberry Woods, where Lily made the first garden in her life, a rock garden on the steep slope of the hill, with blue flowers, only Dr. Antogony Gallant. Painting was my great happiness when I was a child. When I was about 7 years old, a dignified older man who worked on the newspaper with Lily, a sort of small town renaissance man named C.P. Sumerel, taught an evening class in the creative writing, the event too, and who painted landscape that hung in the local art gallery. I painted the view from Lily and Ralph's balcony, the same afternoon on which I later watched you fall slowly backwards through the air, clinging to the top rungs of Ralph's tall ladder. When I try to imagine the expression on your face the moment before death, it is the look of the boy on the leader, ecstatic, accepting for doomed. Although I can't remember for sure which afternoon during that visit I painted the picture, which is now stashed away in the Quick Hill basement along with some other artworks, including poor C.P. Summerell's defaced oil portrait of Lily as an attractive young widow in a green silk blouse with distant blue eyes and a Sibyl's half smile. I have no trouble recalling the mood I was in. I was contented. I hadn't allowed myself the luxury of painting since I was living abroad. Maybe even longer ago than that. I don't think I painted in college either. And I didn't do oil painting when I lived for those 2 years with my father, sister, and brother in the eastern part of the state. Only some drawings and watercolor to pass the boring afternoon. And there were so many of them, yet I loved them precisely for their boringness and normality and respectability. A couple of times, when I came back for visits in those years when you and Draft are still small, I took it out and squinted at it. I thought I could still see the outline of the old lily. I knew the enraptured Mr. CPS, faithfully executive vision of Lillis could not be restored, but I was arrogant enough to believe my skills and my memory could bring back its essence. I got out my paints and brushes, untaped a line and drags, and dabbled and wiped and put it and took out something. But all I finally succeeded in doing what was removing the secret sparkle from the distant eyes. The only part of the painting, except from the blouse, Lily herself adversely refrained from tampering. Thank you everyone for your time and attention.